Hey, Sub here. Wanted to jump in and talk about the article that Tom Henderson released on Insider Gaming today. Specifically, this article is him interviewing Charlie Olson, who is a developer at Call of Duty with Raven and I think another studio, in which he talks about his role in developing the MMR algorithm that powers SBMM in Call of Duty. So I was excited to hear this article and see it after kind of getting a chance to glance through it and read what they said. They didn't have a whole lot of new information, but it did have a really good insight into the mindset of the higher ups running Call of Duty and arguably probably running most of the games that are out there today, especially live service games. And you know, I think it can be summed up in the in what is obviously the new motto that game studios have, which is, if we can't count it, you can't have it. And by the way, we don't know how to count fun, so you don't get that in your games. So in this article, they talk about SBMM, and I'm going to go through and just kind of read some of the quotes that stood out to me. And I want to emphasize why this is indicative of the mindset of the people in charge. And I want to reiterate that that's what we need to change as players. We need to force them to reevaluate how they evaluate the success of their game. Because right now, their success of their game is driven in two ways: monetization, how much money they make on it, which it's a publicly traded, Microsoft and Call of Duty before that were publicly traded companies. So obviously making money is important. If you aren't making money, then there's not a reason to have the product. But at the same time, the quantitative system that they've put into place to measure how our engagement with the game is what they use to determine whether or not the player base is having fun and enjoying their game. He says live service games need SBMM and SBMM needs MMR, he said. He continues to explain that both are needed to ensure long-term sustainability and player engagement, which are both crucial components in ensuring a successful live service game. Look, SBMM exists because it maximizes engagement in a way that they can quantify. All right. Previous Call of Duties did not have this system, right? Call of Duty, the original Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 2, these beloved titles, they didn't have this sort of metric. They didn't have this live service system. They had, how many copies did we sell, right? That was their main metric. That's how they measured success. They sold copies, and they sold very well. And they were very well played for a very long time. Some of these games still have stable player bases that rival, some of the bad days on Call of Duty now. All right. So when we talk about SBMM, right, when we talk about the mindset that they have, they measure our enjoyment of the game, how much fun we have playing the game, by how much we play and what we're doing in it. We were able to request our data not too long ago, and analyzing that and kind of breaking it down. Exclusive Ace did an excellent job on that. I've looked at mine. I've looked at some other people's as well. And the reality is that, they're focused on things like how often do we play? How long do we play for? How often do we shoot our gun? How often are we moving around the map? How often are we, getting kills or dying? How often do we quit mid-match, right? These are things they focus on. And their goal, and I've done entire videos on this, their whole goal is to boil down our experience into these metrics that they can put on a graph and then show the higher ups that what they're doing is successful. The reality is that's not a good way to measure fun, right? Fun is not something that's easy to measure by definition. It's an emotion, right? It's fun is something that is internal, and it's a little bit different for everybody. But the reality is that when you boil down the experience to these quantitative measurements, right, and then you try to reverse it, right, where you try to increase the quantitative measurements and thereby increase the fun that people are having, it doesn't work, right? There's a disconnect between those two things. So he goes on and he kind of delves into how they approach SBMM and the game in general, right? And there was an interesting pair of quotes that were a little bit separated, but when you put them together, it really emphasizes this contradiction in that they're trying to get us to play more and do more so that they can make more money, right? Which their business, they should, right? If they don't make any money, they're not going to make it, right? They're not. We won't have the game at all. So I don't have a problem with them making money, but I do have the problem of them assuming that that play time and that the engagement, right, that they are measuring is actually indicative of how much fun we're having. And they say that they actually, Charlie actually says, if you are trying to get better at the game, SBMM just rewards you with tougher opponents. I'd even say that SBMM punishes players for being good. That's unfair, and players are right to complain about it. This has been the statement, especially among higher skilled players. But honestly, everybody who is not an absolute burger at the game runs into this, where your lobbies are just constantly sweaty. You have to work hard every time in order to play, right? A lot of players, especially OG Warzone players, hark back to the days where you could, sit back and kind of goof off and play and play with your buds and have a good time. And the reality is that's just not a thing anymore. You can't take that mentality, especially in public matches, because the skill of the players around you are at least almost always your skill or better. And so your ability to play the game, the speed and the speed at which the game moves, the speed at which people play the game, the skill that people bring to the game, you have to match that. You have to put in the effort to match it. And the thing is if you play at a skill level higher than those around you, right? If you don't have to work hard to play the game is going to figure that out very quickly and is going to put you in lobbies that you do have to work hard at, right? I don't think that there is anybody who is playing the game and isn't playing their absolute hardest every time and being matched or exceeded in the skills of their opponents. All right? It's literally what SBMM is trying to do. They're trying to keep you at the same skill level as everybody else, or, in the same skill bracket, right? For a lot of players, that means you're the bottom of the lobby skill bracket because they're moving you up. However, he goes on to say at a different part, contrary to what some players believe, you really don't have to try your hardest every match. If you do go off meta, your MMR will adapt after a few bad games and matches will get easier. The exception would be when you're playing low pop modes that attract high skilled players or during open betas. Exclusive Ace and some other creators have analyzed their data. I've done it as well. And the reality is that the skill system that they have in place, the metrics that it checks and the things that are the most important for your skill rating are not directly related to your performance in the game. The reality is it's related to how you play the game. So when he says, contrary to what some players believe, you really don't have to try your hardest every match, the reality is, yes, you do, because the game isn't, the system isn't taking into account your individual performance as a sole indicator of your skill. The reality is it's tracking things like your movement time and some of the other aspects of the game. And movement was actually one of the critical aspects that they tracked. It was one of the most consistent indicators of your skill rating was how often you were moving, which is really geared towards how you play the game rather than what weapons you use or the outcome of the game. This sort of system is not compatible with the claim that you don't always have to try your hardest every match, because he talks about it being off meta. It's not about being off meta. It's actually about your play style. You have to change your entire play style to change your skill rating. And this was shown, Exclusive Ace, I believe it was Ace, did a video segment where he was actually testing some XP things, and other creators demoed this or were able to reproduce this, and it showed in their stats. I had done some testing and some stuff with some other weapons during the camo grind, and I saw the same thing where you have to completely change the manner in which you play the game, whether it be quitting games instantly, playing passively, playing for rockets. There was another creator who, and I think it was Blame Truth, but I can't remember off the top of my head. He had a whole segment where he was trying to do the camo grind on the rocket launcher, and he had to feed deaths to the he had to throw himself in front of the enemy to get them enough UAVs for him to shoot them down, right? And he did that for games and games and games. And that actually is a different style for him. It changed his MMR, it lowered it, and it changed his lobbies. The different weapons that he used, right, didn't change his skill rating. When you look at his skill rating over time, irrelevant of the weapon that he was grinding at the time, it didn't change his skill rating. What changed it is how he plays the game, which means that the idea that you can simply go off meta and that after a few bad games, the system will adapt itself to your choice to not use meta weapons is categorically not true, right? We can observe this, and the reality is that this system is designed to lock people in to various skill brackets, all right, and keep them there. Now, you would ask yourself, why, right? On stats, Olson explained that around half of players would be driven to stop playing without SBMM because the sometimes you stomp, sometimes you get stomped narrative only applies to about 40% of players by skill, with 10% of the very top players doing 90% of the pub stomping. People don't like being the weak link repeatedly, and high-skilled players don't like carrying a team of potatoes all the time. Look, the way the system works now, high-skilled players get stuck with teams of potatoes anyways. And in terms of players quitting, they've already quit. I went ahead and checked the Steam charts, and I've done videos on how showing that Steam charts, this is a good litmus test for how the game is doing. It holds up as a litmus test. All right. It's the number. You can't compare the numbers to other games, but in terms of the game's performance over time, absolutely carries the day. All right. I have highlighted here the previous lowest point of Call of Duty, which was the last day of MW2, the day before MW3 went live. All right. 58,000 players, 58,370 players. All right. On average, we've been averaging about 55,000 players today. If Call of Duty is so worried that half the players would be driven to stop playing without SBMM, you know what the problem is? They've already left. SBMM didn't keep them anyways because the game hasn't been fun. The game has been driven to the maximum of engagement. Every event we've had has been focused on how much time are you going to play the game for? It's XP. How much XP do you get? You get XP from just showing up. All right. How many tokens, how many skulls can you collect? How many tokens can you collect? That's just grinding time. There's no skill in that. These are not skill events. Last MW3 had lots of skill events. Right now, these are just engagement events. All they want you to do is sit on the game. You could literally rubber band your controllers and complete these objectives because they're driving to engagement. And the mindset in corporate is that engagement equals fun. If you're here, you're having fun. If you're not here, then you left because it wasn't fun because you were getting pub stomped. When the reality is people are leaving anyways. All-time peak, 49,000 players. Or 491,000 players. We haven't gotten near that. Black Ops 6 launched, had 200,000 players, or 300,000 players, something like that, at an all-time peak. It has dropped to 55,000 That is brutal. And it's brutal because they aren't making the game fun. They're making the game optimized for engagement. That's what they're driving at. That's their focus, is engagement. They want us on the game, and they don't care about what we feel the game is. They don't care that we don't have a good time, that we get in there and we're frustrated the whole time. They just want us to stay on there. They want us to finish the battle pass. They want us to finish the event. They want us to finish all of these things. And the reality is there's no way to measure that outside of our engagement time. Therefore, engagement equals fun. But most people aren't having fun. They're frustrated, and they're quitting in droves. We have lost so many players in this game that it actually harkens back to one of the problems that they talk about. And I read over it a minute ago, where they say, the exception to the MMR not working, like to having a lot of fluctuation in it, right? The off meta discussion. They say the exception would be when you're playing low pop modes, right? Basically, there aren't enough people to give you a big enough spread for the system to provide a good gaming experience for everybody, right? They have to shove everybody together, which means the higher skilled players dominate everything. Nobody has any fun. And then there's so many higher skilled players in relation to the lower skilled players who have all left, then the mode's not fun for them either, right? That's the reality that we face. And we face that because the game is not optimized for fun. It is not optimized for enjoying playing the game. It's optimized for this engagement system, right? For the amount of time that we spend on the game. And they do that through events. They do that through their gifted double XP tokens. They do that through all these mechanics, because the more you play the game, the more likely you are to buy a skin. So, what's the solution? How do you fix it? Look, SBMM's not going away. They're very clear about that, and they believe in it. And it has become so entrenched that we're not going to see it gone forever. The reality is it should go away in some modes, right? Ranked should be extremely strict. Should be the strictest SBMM you can get, because you should only be playing within your rank, plus or minus a little bit. Right now, they don't have the players for it. It's rough to play ranked. Ranked, no matter what, should be strict, and if that means you have to wait 5 minutes for a match, so be it. Open pubs shouldn't have any SBMM. I did a model on this. I did another video on it, and it's really clear that if you don't have SBMM, the pub's experience is better for pretty much everybody, except maybe the bottom percent. But if you're at that skill level where you just can't do anything in the game, there honestly should be other modes for you, right? Right now, we have some great modes that are fun modes. Boot Camp, Plunder, right? Some LTMs that roll along. Now, these modes, they are restructured. They're a little different, but they're fun modes. They're not entirely designed to be taken super seriously. And most people don't. And most people just have a good time playing the modes. And those modes actually can be a lot of fun. They are often a lot more fun than the real modes, because the real modes are choked out with this SBMM. And lastly, the game needs to be transparent, right? We need to bring the transparency back into the game. When we had it in Warzone 1, we could look and see online. You could look and see how your lobby was. You could see the skill of your lobby, how, if you got wiped by someone who was just really good at the game, or, someone that seemed a little bit suspect, you could also see that too. Give yourself a little peace of mind. But you could also see how the game thought of you, right? We had a lot of great assets. Warzone ranked, we had, it's been so long, I forget some of these names, but we had a lot of systems out there that could really give you an idea of how the game worked and where you stood in relation to everybody else. And they've gotten rid of that. Now, I'll give Charlie credit when he addresses this, and he's, I think, spot on. And he talks about the transparency that's needed in this game. He says casual doesn't need to be completely about skill like ranked. but you should be able, and by casual he means pubs, but you should be able to see something about the average skill of your lobby or opponents. Like maybe this match was a gold tier, so you get, and he talks about rewarding you for playing in higher skilled lobbies, so you get a 1.2 XP multiplier. You should be able to see your MMR, matchmaking ranking, aka skill ranking, in the combat record. You shouldn't have to file a personal data request with Activision just to get that information. Duh. Yes, you are correct on that. That is absolutely true. But the reality is that all of that boils down to they're reducing fun and our experience with the game to data points. And it's a flawed method of measuring success of a game. But unfortunately, right now it's the only method that corporate understands. It's the only method that the reporting systems understand, right? I don't know what the right answer is, but I do know that the system they have now is not it. It needs changing. It needs fixing and adjusting. We can't have this system dominating both ranked and open public matches and expect people to have fun. All right? We need to return the fun to Call of Duty, and we need to do that now.